Hello, and welcome to the Kemetic How-To Guide for Egyptian Pagan and Kemetic practitioners. I'm your host, Sharon. Lately there's been a lot of talk about the downsides of fast fashion and how cheap clothes today really are cheap. Now, I don't know, as you're watching this, how cheap they still are. You see, I wrote this episode before there was a big global kerfuffle about a word that starts with a T and rhymes with sheriff. So, we live in a really weird world. Any resemblance between today's episode and current events is strictly and ironically coincidental. But we're going to talk about some really retro fashion, as in New Kingdom Egypt fashion. Because you see, there's a website, and it's called Fashion Era, and I'm going to give you the link in the description. And they describe a way that you can make what they say is an easy but authentic form of New Kingdom dress, using a very simple pattern. So we're going to try it out. Now I'm going to give you a little bit of historical background, starting with the very fabric of the subject, because you see, all of our material today is made by machine, but in ancient times every inch of clothing that you wore was woven by hand. And to give you an example of something that is woven by hand, literally one of my pandemic projects was to build a loom out of scrap wood and tack nails and popsicle sticks. I'll see if I can put a picture of it up there for you. But mine uses a very thick gauge of thread, as in rug yarn. But this wool scarf, and let me see if I can show you the fabric up close. There you go. All of that is woven by hand. And just this scarf took me a couple of days to do. So imagine if you're making this much fabric by hand. So patterns in ancient times had to be simple because you couldn't be wasteful, and they couldn't be very elaborate because you're not going to be cutting out pieces to make lapels or even sleeves. Those were a later invention. By the way, my Patreon exclusive for this month is going to be talking about Mesopotamian garb, and that's where we can talk a little bit more about that. Quick plug. But your fashions tended to be more simple because this stuff came at a premium. The finest linen was made in royal workshops, and some of it was so sheer it was nearly transparent. But even if you were, an average peasant woman, if you knew how to weave, then you could support yourself. And we have records of women who did. Either they brought extra money into a household, or sometimes they supported themselves and their children with their weaving. Interesting bit of comparison. In my family, the story goes, I had a great-aunt Della whose husband ran out on her and their 7 children. And so she supported her family by sewing and selling quilts. And, there's lots of other interesting stories about Great-Aunt Della. But I think about that, and I think about today's world of Temu, or even, comforter sets that you can go buy at Walmart. And I wonder how well she would be able to manage in today's world doing the same sort of thing. I don't think she would have done as well. So, for today's project, I am using some material that is called a linen look-alike. It's cotton, but it's got the look and, well, they say the feel, but this is a little softer, I think, than actual linen sometimes is. If you're following along with our project, which you can, you'll need to start with at least 3 yards worth of this fabric. Now, I'm 5'3", so this should be enough for me. If you're taller than that, then you might need to go for 4 yards to give yourself enough length as we make this project. Okay, so you've gone to the store and gotten some fabric. By the way, if there's a Joann's in your area, go see what they have left, clear them out. That's what I did. First thing you're going to want to do is take your material, open it out, and you see how wide this is? Here's the beautiful thing. I mentioned height. You don't have to worry about width on this one. It doesn't matter what your size is, this will fit. So you're going to take it, and we're going to fold it in half, or we're going to double it over, I should say, lengthwise. So here's another thing you're going to want to keep in mind, and you know, this can get tricky, and I'll tell you something that has even tripped me up recently. The first thing you want to make sure is which side of the fabric is going to be the outside. With a plain piece of white, that can seem a little odd. If you happen to be working with something that has a print on it, that's easy. You know, the vivid side is the outside, the dull side is going to be your inside. On this white fabric, you could almost get away with either one, but this side looks like it was the top when it was being woven, and it's a little bit of a different shade on the back, just barely. This is going to be my inside. So as you're sewing, as you're working, you want it inside out, because we're going to be stitching on it and seeing all the seams facing us. We want them to be on the inside when we wear it. So remember, we're working inside out. Another thing it'll help to remember is, you know, your shoulders have some width to them, so you want to account for that. So it'll help if you actually put the fabric on you and then say, okay, how far do I want it to go down? And so once you have that figured out, then you're going to gather it up. And you know what? I'm going to end up using every bit of what I've got here. Okay, at this point, I've done enough work to figure out where this is going to go if we stick with this pattern. So I'm going to demonstrate for you, and we're going to reconnoiter here, because this project has kind of thrown some wrinkles, which I will demonstrate. I stitched a little bit at the bottom of either side to hold it down. So now we have it complete enough that we can sort of try it on inside out to see how it's going to work. So let's find out. So for starters, this thing is big. This is based on the costume design that you see on the webpage. They're using an example from the late period of Osiris in a large robe and holding crook and flail. I'm not digging my ceremonial crook and flail out of the shrine cabinet, but just imagine the white crown of Osiris and, you're halfway home. However, to get that New Kingdom style robe, fair caveat, in the description in the webpage, they actually tell you not to stitch up the sides because, again, they are presenting this as something for non-sewers, rather like the Dress Parade website that led me to the Fashion Era website. Dress Parade used to be called Take Back Halloween, and if you're looking for historical garb for ladies, for goddesses, that's such a fun website. I highly encourage you go check it out just because you learn some things and you get some ideas and, again, you can link hop and discover all sorts of interesting things. But let's see what happens when we try to gather this up in order to get that effect of, the New Kingdom robe with the gathered sleeves and the sash in the front. So I have this sash. It was gifted to me, but you can find plain white sashes, at, Walmart or, practically anywhere. Now you'll notice we have an awful lot of extra material. If you were going strictly by the Fashion Era website, you could take this and just fold it to the front or the back. But since we've pinned this with the intention of making something permanent, we have to gather it all up in the front. So that's where it gets kind of quirky. Because you tie the sash, and you have a lot of extra material in the front. Which, in the New Kingdom, those who could afford it would do. They did have big billowy clothing because they could afford the extra fabric, so it was kind of a way of, showing off. Sort of like, getting a Gucci bag would be nowadays. So right off, okay, it looks passable, but one thing I noticed is that it's really heavy in the front. You've got a lot of extra fabric and it does kind of pull down a bit in the front. And with the sash and everything, I looked in the mirror when I tried this last night and I said, God, I look like I'm ready to go to a bad Christmas pageant. Well, you know what? That was actually the intention of the website. The problem is these things, they're great for ideas, but they're meant for folks that are just doing costumes. Well, what if I actually want to use this for ritual garb, or to go to a pagan shindig? You want to be a little more serious than that. So we have to figure out how to hack this pattern a little bit more. So you know what? I'm going to do a part 2 next month. This is not going to get the better of me because being able to sew, I literally have been sewing using some tool or another since I was 8 years old, for 40 years. So I'm not doing simple stuff. I want, more advanced projects. And I know that I have viewers that are interested in SCA garb. One of my viewers, if I understand correctly, you did a thesis on fabric in ancient Egypt. Don't be shy about that. Tell us in the comments about that project, because I'd love to know more about it. And you probably have some things that you can tell me about this. But here's one thing that I did learn just from this attempt here. 36 inches, 1 yard, is the standard width that you buy fabric in today. But ancient fabric was going to be not set to a standard like that. It was, they probably had their own standards, but it would have been like, for example, a cubit. The length from the tip of your fingers to your elbow. Or, a number of cubits. It would have been set by whatever the width of the loom was. And so they probably were working with fabric that was not quite as wide across as what we have here. So that idea of taking a length of fabric And doubling it over would have been a little easier. We wouldn't have run into all of this excess. But again, I'm going to figure out how to make this work and how to sew it to where it's something wearable. But in the meantime, I had planned to give you guys a historically garbed happy dance, because I have some really gotta do that. It's part of the kitsch. But I have some really wonderful viewers, and some of you super folks have given me some super stickers. So Kid Ptolemy's going to do another happy dance just for you. Before we talk about next month, let me tell you about a few books that I've been working on. Now, about that Patreon exclusive that I mentioned, we're going to be covering Mesopotamian garb in companion to my latest book, which is out now. I encourage you to get it on Lulu.com. And this is In Praise of Ishtar, Modern Day Worship of the Ancient Goddess. And this, for those of you who might be wondering, I take kind of a Babylonian approach, as in the time frame, what records we have, and the calendar. We have a more complete calendar from Babylon than we do from ancient Sumer. There's a lot of variations in there. That's just one of the little details that I talk about in here. But I mention a little bit about garb in here, also building your own shrine and things like that. Some of the things that I covered in my Egyptian books, well, here I'm doing it for a Mesopotamian deity, and discussing other deities from her pantheon as well. So it's out now. I do not have a digital form of it, and I don't plan to, at least not an ebook version of it yet. The reason for that is because ebooks of my Kemetic books have been pirated, and I'd like to get some of those taken down, Scribd being a good case in point. So, however, I know that there are folks that either have trouble reading print, or who can't afford to get something shipped all the way from the United States to another country. So in the coming months, what I hope to do is make an audiobook of In Praise of Ishtar. And eventually I will be able to do the same thing for my Kemetic books, because I know that pagans with visual disabilities often get stuck. They can't find print sources either of academic material or of pagan material that can meet them where they are. So I want to try to redress that balance. And real quick, before we go, I also want to tell you folks about something else that I've mentioned before, but I'm going to include links in the description, because I really want to encourage you, if you like to read fiction, especially if you like to read fantasy or science fiction, I really want to encourage you to try my books. Now, the thing is, they're not under Sharon Laborde. This book, this is the first one in the series, Worlds Away From Here. It just recently won an award at a Women's International Film Festival that took scripts and novel submissions. And it's under the byline of S.L. Broussard. Because people seem to think that women can't write science fiction. Funny thing about that, I was just in a writing workshop with a lady who has written for science fiction, specifically a few episodes of the original Transformers series, so that was really cool. But my books, Worlds Away From Here, the second one is Other Side of Nowhere. Then you have Center of the Dark, that's the third one in the series. And then From Shadows into Light, this is book 1. I'm actually working on book 2. I thought I could get it all in one novel, but no, I had to spread it into 2. But incidentally, book 1 of From Shadows into Light also just won an award, because there was a sister film festival that I submitted it to that's LGBTQ unbordered, and there are some characters in this book that's relevant to, and it won a platinum award. I just got the certificate for it in the mail last week. And I'm going to be adding that to an IMDb page and all sorts of good stuff like that. But I wanted to share that with you guys because I'm super stoked about that. And, see it, my writing doesn't suck, I promise. And the nice thing about this is if you have friends that are not pagan, they're not kind of interested in that sort of thing, so you can't really share with them that interest of yours, this is something that you might be able to share with them that, you could kind of gel with. Lots more people are interested in science fiction and things like that than, are necessarily interested in paganism. We're more of a niche market, and that's okay. You guys have been great to me, and I love all of you, and thank you. And so I just want to share this with you too, and, see if we can, disseminate it to a few more folks. Back to garbing. Tune in next month because we're going to figure out how to make this pattern work better. And whatever I figure out on paper, I will share on Patreon. Because if you recall, a few years ago, we decided to try a Nemesis pattern and it didn't quite work out well. So I made a better pattern and I shared it on Patreon. And there's lots more fun things that are only on Patreon. I'm going to be adding, lots of cool stuff. I've got some collections and some other things like that. So check it out. Originally, I had planned to do a video on solstices next month. But the cool thing about solstices is that in another 6 months you have another one. So we will visit that topic later. In the meantime, we're going to make this work. So for the Kemetic How-To Guide, this is Sharon, wishing you serenity.
Enjoyed this video? Then be sure to hit like and subscribe to the Kemetic Independent channel. You can also buy my books on Lulu.com, and special thanks to all my Patreon supporters. Join us for updates, outtakes, and exclusive videos only on Patreon. Check the description for links.
Cannot believe what I'm seeing!